There's a lot going on right now. I understand these past years haven't just been hard, they've been exhausting. The economy, climate change, and what's going on south of the border leave all of us feeling nervous about the future. Right now, Canadians have lost faith in our party, and we have to earn back their trust. We need to rebuild our party so that we can keep building our country.
Oh, no, I haven't become an apologist for the Liberal Party, or certainly not Karina Gould, but you wouldn't believe anybody would have the gall to put an ad out like that yesterday. Karina Gould just became the third, well, actually the third candidate in the Liberal leadership race that anybody knows. But will there be an actual Liberal leadership race? Or is this all a facade for Justin Trudeau to come back? When we come back, more about what I'm talking. We need a political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, please subscribe. Please like the broadcast. And we really appreciate it because that's what a small station like this needs. Sorry, I'm a little out of... Hope you were able to watch the broadcast last night, the live broadcast with my friends. Fantastic evening. Unfortunately, you can't see it on YouTube, but look at X, and you can see it there. And very interesting. But Karina Gould, now the third real candidate that people actually know her name, always for the wrong reasons. But here she is saying, yes, we need to earn your trust back. She has been part of the problem for 9 years. Karina Gould is a disaster. She's the one who invited the former Waffen-SS member, Jaroslav Hunka, to come to the House of Commons and listen to old Zelensky's speech. She's the one that stood proudly with Hunka before and the event with the speaker. You remember those pictures? Oh, that's Karina Gould. And after this fiasco, she said, let's forget it all and excise it from the House of Commons. Hansard, pretend it never happened. They needed unanimous consent to do that. They didn't get it. Thank God. That's so Orwellian. And the Conservative Party actually said that at the time. Smacks too much of George Orwell, 1984. But Karina Gould's irrelevant. Nobody's going to vote for her. So it's really between Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney. But why are both of them like non-candidates? Mark Carney's day one introduction into the race, we reported on that the last time. It was a disaster. He arrives in a stretch limo, has a Cree woman say a prayer in Cree. It reminded me actually of the other Randy who pretended to be Cree. This woman was genuine. That's not taking any of that away from her. But she didn't even know Mark Carney. She announced that day that she had Googled Mark Carney and discovered he was just a great guy. Is this a joke is what I'm saying. Is this a big joke? Mark Carney, he can't speak. He's a horrible public speaker. He's not the least bit, shall we say, embracing. And even less so is Chrystia Freeland. She is dismissive. She's autocratic. She's supercilious. She's authoritarian. She acts like a school marm who knows better than everybody in the room. Doesn't exactly present those warm and fuzzies. I hate that old caricature, but that is exactly what we're looking at with these two candidates. And Karina Gould, of course, really a joke to even be in the contest, but she's there, I guess, just so they can say there's some kind of a race. But what's really happening here? Once again, you came to the right place. Here's the story of the day. Globe and Mail reported this. I had James Manson of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms on the show this week. Yeah, that's the one where you could barely hear me, but we did repost it Up the volume. Something funny was going on there. Judge agrees to expedite legal challenge of Trudeau's move to prorogue Parliament. Big, big news. What does this mean? It means the Supreme Court could overrule the prorogation of Parliament and bring back Parliament as early as, say, February 14th or 15th. What does that day, February 14th, trigger in your mind? Well, yes, I know it's Valentine's Day. What else? Well, it's the third anniversary of the invocation of the Emergencies Act. Justin Trudeau, and of course, in his twisted poetic sense, invoked the Emergencies Act on Valentine's Day. It was not an act of love. It was an act of vicious hatred against protesters he disagreed with. It was an act of complete enmity against his political opponents. And it was the very, I can't say embodiment. It was the reification of his detestation of democracy. That's what that was all about. Now, here's what the court said here. Yes, I'll have to put my glasses on. People hate it when they squint. This is the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms application. The applicants maintain that their application is truly urgent and requires the court's immediate attention to determine whether the Parliament can immediately resume sitting to protect Canada's interests in the face of threatened actions by the United States. Those threatened actions are stated to be President-elect Trump's stated intention to impose a 25% tariff on all goods entering the United States from Canada on his first day in office as president. The court agreed with that. Is it possible Justin Trudeau is losing support even in the judiciary? But is it possible Justin Trudeau anticipated this happening? Think about this for a second. Is it possible that Justin Trudeau anticipated precisely the court deciding this, that they would have to go back to Parliament? And what if the NDP decides, hey, now's our chance? Now's our chance to bring this government down because the Liberals are weakened. They don't have a new leader. They'll have to go with Justin Trudeau. Do you think that's the plan, though, from the beginning? Why do you think Justin Trudeau's been wandering around looking like a candidate, going to events, glad handing, having a great time, looking like he's just too happy? I wonder if this was the plan from the beginning. Now, what did I tell you about 4 or 5 weeks ago? We've already seen this happen. And guess whose political career it happened to? Yeah. Justin Trudeau's apparent father, Pierre Trudeau. Now, Justin Trudeau would vaguely remember this. But this was 1979, and I've explained this before. The Liberal Party is out of power after 63, 16 years. The Liberal Party has been in power since 1963 under Lester Pearson. Goes through 5 years minority governments under Pearson. Pierre Trudeau becomes the leader of the party in 1968, gets a majority. Pierre Trudeau is in power from 1968 to 79. He's defeated on May 22nd of that year by Joe Clark, the progressive conservative, who I really have no time for today, but that's beside the point. He ended all of those years, of 16 years of Trudeau and Pearson rule, Liberal Party rule. Pierre Trudeau does not like being the leader of the official opposition. It's obvious he hates the job. And he decides in November to resign. Now let's have a look at this. Because people always say, yeah, I remember when Trudeau resigned, if you were around, in 1984, he decided to resign. Took that walk in the snow in Ottawa here. It was a February evening. It's February 29th, actually, because it was leap year, and that only comes once in 4 years. So people joked, you can only celebrate Trudeau's demise every 4 years. So that is what happened in 1984. But what happened in 1979? Trudeau resigned for the first time, and the party begged him to come back because there was a snap election. in 1980, in February 28th, I believe it was. There was a snap election. The Liberal Party did not have a new leader. In fact, they'd barely begun to have a leadership convention or planning for a leadership convention. They were caught off guard. So they said to Pierre Trudeau, please come back, leave the party. And let's watch this, because this is precisely what's happening right now with Justin Trudeau.
Nearly 12 years as leader of the Liberal Party, I'm stepping down. That after spending nearly 12 years as leader of the Liberal Party, I'm stepping down from the leadership and asking the national executive of the party to call a convention for next March to choose a new leader. There's no easy way or ideal time to leave.
Trudeau said today he's going to stay on in politics and that he'll try again to become Canada's Prime Minister.
I have accepted the strong appeal of the National Liberal Caucus and the National Liberal Executive, and I will lead our party in the current election campaign. If they love me so much that they want me forever, the answer is, I'm sorry they can't have me. But if they want me and our party for a few years, well, we're here.
Trudeau's decision left most of the Liberals here and in the National Executive gasping in relief.
That's the way it was with Pierre Trudeau. The Liberal Party begged him to come back because there was a snap surprise election and they were unprepared. This could happen if the court decides prorogation never happened and the House of Commons is back in session on February 14th or 15th. Good chance the NDP could vote with the Conservatives on a non-confidence motion, because there'll never be a better chance for the NDP at that point. That would be their opportunity to try to salvage what they can from the disaster they've made under Jagmeet Singh. And as I said, Jagmeet Singh would get his pension. That's not going to be a barrier, because that's been the barrier up till now. Jagmeet Singh refuses to have a non-confidence vote, refuses to bring the government down, because he's waiting to get his pension date, which is in March. Bring the government down in mid-February, there won't be an election until at least March 15th. Minimum is 4 weeks. So Jagmeet Singh is safe. He can get his pension. And that's what it comes down to in politics. It's that greedy. It's that venal. It's that disgusting. That's what politics in Canada has come to. Now, Justin Trudeau could well say, just like his father said, well, if you want me back, I'll come back. Maybe not for good, maybe not forever, but I'll come back just to lead the party in the next election because you need me. And besides, who else have they got? We'll have a look at the polls in a minute here. They're not doing any better under Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland than they were under Justin Trudeau. And as I said, Justin Trudeau is going to use the fight with Donald Trump as a reason for Canadians to rally round the Liberal Party, which he says represents Canada, which he says represents all parties now. If you're not with Justin Trudeau, if you're not with Team Trudeau, you're treasonous. You're against the country. You're being selfish. Doug Ford thinks so. Doug Ford is in Trudeau's pocket. The only premier who's saying no is Danielle Smith, and she's right. Because the federal government has no right to tell Alberta where it can sell its gas. Danielle Smith, in standing up for Alberta sovereignty in this area, is standing up for Canada, because that's what Canada is based on. Provincial autonomy over natural resources. That's about Canada as well as provincial rights. People need to remember that. Justin Trudeau has no right to infringe upon provincial autonomy just because he wants to be the guy who's fighting Donald Trump. But Justin Trudeau will use the trade war. He'll use the fight against Donald Trump to say that he's Mr. Canada, or he's the Sun King. La tête, c'est moi. That is Justin Trudeau's strategy all along. He'll continue to do it. Let's listen to this little piece from Nick Nanos.
Joining me now to dig deeper into these numbers is founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research, Nick Nanos. Nick, thanks for being on.
But right now, they're way behind. They're 27 points back of the Conservatives. Just think, the Liberals were worried when they were 10 points back. 15 points back, 20 points back, 27, mucho big. That's a mucho big advantage.
Yeah, but like they say, the most dangerous lead in hockey is a 3-goal lead, right? And it seems insurmountable. And then who knows? I'm kidding. I'm really kidding about that one. But you had some polling recently, specifically on Chrystia Freeland, though, and how people felt about her after her resignation from cabinet. Could the impression of Miss Freeland improve even more now?
I think so. And I think a lot of this will have to do with her launch and what she decides to focus on. The big question is, as the former deputy prime minister, as the former minister of finance, as a former kind of ranking liberal that supported Justin Trudeau, how far will she go to distance herself from her former political?
Those numbers are terrible, by the way. If you look at those numbers, she hasn't gained an inch of traction. And she's just as unpopular as ever.
Ally and colleague. And I think that's going to be the big question, because she's been at the table, been an advocate, and has fought hard beside Justin Trudeau over the last number of years. And, you know, right now, his brand is weak, and that's one of the things that's dragging down the Liberal brand writ large. So I think, how far will she distance herself from everything that she's done basically since 2015?
Well, we already got a bit of an indication this week, right, where we had reporting that she has already said she would likely walk away or very much scrap the consumer carbon tax. How much do you think that will be a factor, not only with the field of candidates and where they will sort of sit on that, but going into an election? Is that going to be the ballot box question against Pierre Poilievre as he wants it, especially when you consider where the leadership is going?
Well, I think this is an exercise in damage control for the Liberals. Like, you know, the carbon tax has been unpopular. Canadians are worried about the rising cost of living. And for some people, and in some cases, this is a contributor because it contributes to food, you know, being shipped around. But, you know, the thing is that for average Canadians, why don't we just say they're not stupid? You know, they hear politicians reverse themselves and they know that it's just part of a survival strategy. So, you know, for the Liberals, they might, you know, the contenders might reverse themselves on the carbon tax. But, you know, for her, she actually has to explain how she can go from being 100% behind a carbon tax and being at the table and being the advocate for the carbon tax to reversing herself. And, you know, the same applies to Mark Carney, because we have to be fair. He's been supportive of a carbon tax. Yeah. He's been a leader on kind of environmental issues. And, you know, he's also kind of backpedaling on stuff like that.
Yeah, and imagine the polling that you've either started or tried to start on potential contenders and where they would fare really differs based on day to day, because somebody drops out seemingly every day and somebody else puts their name in there. But are we really going to see the emergence here of a two-horse race? And we know that Karina Gould, the Liberal House leader, is going to announce this weekend. But do you think this really is Carney versus Freeland?
I think so, based on you know, the speculation right now. And you know what? A two-person race is probably good for the Liberals, because it'll focus.
And of course, Nick Nanos can't see the forest for the trees. Two-person race. This two-person race is a setup. Conceivably, I'm not going to put money on this, but anything is possible right now in politics, and everything Justin Trudeau is doing indicates he's not finished with politics. He's actively out there campaigning. He's presenting himself as the embodiment of Canada. And if you're against Justin Trudeau, you're with Donald Trump. He says it all the time. Daniel Smith and Pierre Poilievre are with Donald Trump because they're not supporting me. Nick is missing this entirely, but in terms of the leadership race that's actually happening, he's right about that. There's only two people who matter.
Focus things. You know, if you remember, Michael, some of those massive leadership contests where they have like 20, 12, 15 people on the stage, that it doesn't allow for the same type of clarity. And, you know, Canadians like a horse race. And I think for the two frontrunners, Freeland and Carney, it'll be good for both of them to have a main contender to put pressure on each other so that we can see who can, you know, who will get the advantage.
Do you think in the end this will come down to what Canadians will look at this as, what they want as the Liberal leader, but then going forward as a Prime Minister is who is best placed to take on Donald Trump because of where we are in this environment right now?
I think the two things that Canadians are going to look at is how far will the winner of the Liberal leadership race distance themselves from the previous government? Is it really a break from the past? And then the second question, which also applies to Pierre Poilievre, who might be best to help Canada navigate a Trump administration and to deal with Donald Trump?
Yes. Now, Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland, a two-way race. Does it matter if either of them win or lose? Or is the answer someplace else? Let's have a look at what Chrystia Freeland presented. Now, we've seen Mark Carney's introduction to the race. It was a bit of a joke. Even the Toronto Star said, wow, what a letdown. Here's this guy, the golden boy of liberal politics. That's exactly how they described John Turner in 1984, by the way. He was the golden boy. He was going to come back and save the Liberal Party because Pierre Trudeau was so unpopular in 1984. That's the year, somebody gave him the finger in British Columbia when he was sitting on a train and he lowered the shade, but he put his finger out the window. That was the year and Pierre Trudeau was hugely unpopular. So he resigned. Yeah. And of course, Paul Martin was the other golden boy. He was going to save things after Jean Chrétien had spent 10 years in office. Didn't work in that case either. So will it work with Chrystia Freeland? I don't think she's ever going to have a chance to see.
And on a little secret, Donald Trump doesn't like me very much.
Canada, we don't like their representative very much.
I'm a tough negotiator. During the first Trump administration, I fought hard to protect Canadian jobs, the Canadian economy, and our way of life. And we won. I left Trudeau's cabinet because I know what we need to do to win that fight again.
See, now it's Trudeau's cabinet, like that thing over there, that horrible device, that mechanism that I don't know how I could ever have been involved with it. It's like saying she stopped using drugs. I left Trudeau's cabinet, and she was an integral part of that cabinet as deputy prime minister and finance minister. For 9.5 years, she was an integral part of the Trudeau government. And now suddenly, I don't know what I ever had to do with that party. That really is horrible.
Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies think they can push us around. Trump thinks we're for sale, but he can take what isn't his. I'm not going to let him. We're a proud country. The true north, strong and free. A country of smart, caring, and hardworking people. A country that gets big things done. A country worth fighting for. But Pierre Paul.
I got to stop there and make this obvious comment. So now we're all about Terry Fox. We're all about hockey games. We're all about helping each other. What about all of this gender affirming care? What about medical assistance in dying? What about woke politics? What about spending tens of millions of dollars on LGBTQ causes? What about telling parents they have no right to raise their children? That's the Canada that Chrystia Freeland was trying to build. That's the Canada the Liberal Party stands for. Not some Canada that actually Pierre Poilievre has been talking about, where people can actually make some money at their jobs and protect their kids and their families.
He'll bow down to Trump and sell us out. This moment matters for all of us. I'm running to be leader of the Liberal Party and our next prime minister. I'm in this to fight for you, to fight for Canadians, to fight for Canada. Join me. Join the fight.
All right, Chrystia has had a nice makeover. She's had about a month now or more of relaxation away from the hurly-burly of cabinet. She looks a lot better. Looks much more relaxed. Maybe she's even had some Botox. I don't know. But she looks much better. She's really, really looking as well as Chrystia Freeland ever does. And she's even talking like she understands you. She's even talking like she cares about ordinary Canadians. Of course she doesn't. She never has. This is the woman, of course, who has been vociferous in her support of very questionable regiments in Ukraine. Can't get into details on that right now. But can you take her seriously for a minute that she really thinks she's going to be the next Liberal leader? And of course, what does she do? Even though she was saying, I don't know how I could ever have been a part of that Trudeau cabinet. I left Trudeau's cabinet. I was part of that government, but I don't know what was wrong with it. What was I thinking? So Chrystia Freeland now says it's all about Donald Trump. No, it's all about fighting Donald Trump. And if you're not fighting Donald Trump with me, then you're not on the right side. You can't fight it with Pierre Poilievre. No, Pierre Poilievre doesn't understand. Pierre Poilievre is on the wrong side. He's in Donald Trump's pocket, even though Pierre Poilievre has been saying nothing like that. He's been saying Canada is not going to be the 51st state. And of course, Donald Trump isn't serious about that. He's been saying we need to sit down with Donald Trump from a Canada First perspective, not from a Team Trudeau perspective, which of course is what Chrystia Freeland is leading to. But what does this all mean? What does this all mean? All she's really doing, despite the fact she's pretending to distance herself from Justin Trudeau's cabinet, from Justin Trudeau's government, she's repeating the same talking points that Justin Trudeau has been repeating all week, which is, thank you, Doug Ford, for coming on side and being in my pocket, as you always are when I do stupid things. Thank you, Doug Ford, for supporting me. And Danielle Smith, you're a traitor to Canada because you are defending your province and you're defending actually the Canadian Constitution. That makes you a potential traitor to Canada. Oh, and Pierre Poilievre, you're not on my side either. So that means you are against Canada and you're on Donald Trump's side. Chrystia Freeland is repeating the talking points that Justin Trudeau is repeating. Could that indicate that this is all a big game? This Liberal leadership campaign with Mark Carney pretending he really wants to be the leader of a party that's headed for a political extinction. That Chrystia Freeland pretending she's a new woman. She represents change. It's all a huge facade. And listen to how the Liberal cabinet ministers, the remnant of the Liberal cabinet ministers, continue to frame this battle with Donald Trump, saying things they're not even authorized to say. Here's the inimitable Mélanie Joly. Now, I saw a thing yesterday on YouTube, some YouTube wag suggesting that she had a drug problem. I mean, we don't need to go there because nobody knows that. You know, that's really not necessary. We need to just listen to what she says and judge whether or not she's an effective or competent minister, and stop speculating about her private life and inventing vulgar headlines, because that just hurts all of us.
Trump is going ahead with tariffs. He's starting a trade war. And of course we will retaliate. And you know what will happen for all those watching us right now?
Oh, everything, Mélanie. Trade war. That's what you've wanted from day one. That's what Justin Trudeau has wanted from day one. And I've said that repeatedly. This whole leadership facade is all about sending out people like Mélanie Joly and Dominic LeBlanc to say, we're going to have a trade war with the United States, which of course we cannot win. But Mélanie Joly, we're going to have a trade war against Donald Trump.
Now, this will be a Trump tariff tax on Americans, because this will have an impact on jobs in many, many states. 35 states have Canada as the main export market. And at the same time, we know that we can do a lot to make sure that ultimately at the grocery store, at the pump, when it comes to heating costs, we can try to make sure that things are not as costly. But if we have 25% tariffs against us, of course we will retaliate. And of course that will translate into a tax on Americans.
Can you describe in any greater detail exactly how Canada would retaliate?
Listen, we still want to make sure that we get to...
Listen. No, I don't, is the answer. Because she has no authority to make statements about natural resources that she doesn't control.
Deal without any tariffs. We think we can get there. We have the USMCA, which was, according to President Trump himself, the best deal ever signed by the American administration. We believe it was a win-win. We believe that we're able to create jobs together. And we know that we have to continue to fight inflation. At the same time, we will continue to make sure that we fight back if there's a threat, and everything is on the table.
Well, we know that when we impose tariffs, these are revenues that go to the.
Now, this is really embarrassing to watch, actually. This is your foreign affairs minister explaining what a tariff is. Does this remind you of Kamala Harris? Is Mélanie Joly sort of like Canada's Kamala Harris? Maybe ethnically not quite the same, but intellectually, they seem to be separated at birth.
Canadian government. We also know that, meanwhile, things become more costly across the country because of the fact that Americans are imposing tariffs on us.
Oh, I see, Mélanie. Tariffs mean things become more costly. Oh, I get it. But do you understand any of the dynamics behind how you can't cut off oil and gas to the United States without cutting off oil and gas to Ontario and Quebec? Have you even looked into that?
And so based on that, we want to make sure that ultimately, indeed, we use the revenues to support Canadians. But at the same time, Tana, we're still working on the first phase of our response, which is to prevent tariffs. We know that we can make sure ultimately also, while we're putting everything on the table in terms of retaliation, that we can work with different provinces across the country, including those that have specific industries that Americans rely on. And so that's why I think we can have really positive and constructive relationships and conversations with provinces and with premiers. And of course, the Prime Minister is very open to that. Because we know that the impacts on Canadians would be really, really, really difficult. And why I'm saying that is we know that there would be lots of job loss across the country. And we know that this would also have an impact on cost of living for Canadians. I won't go into the details of what that figure is like, but definitely.
Why won't you go into details? Because you don't have a head for details, or because you don't have them? Clearly, this is somebody is out of her depth. I say that all the time. We discuss Mélanie Joly, but she could at least have the decency to tell us what her trade war is going to entail. And she can't tell you that.
We have numbers that are highlighting how much this could be devastating. This would be basically starting a trade war. The Americans would be starting a trade war against us, and this would be the biggest trade war between Canada and US in decades. We've gone through a very difficult moment during COVID where we had to save many businesses and save a lot of livelihoods across the country. And so we have the experience of how we can address severe economic damage. At the same time, I think that there's...
Did the Liberals save businesses during COVID? No, the lockdowns actually crushed businesses across Canada. Some of them never reopened. You didn't save anything.
The hope that if we use our levers well, that we can make sure that Americans backtrack. And that's why I've been saying everything is on the table, and we have to be able to show how much this will have an impact also on the other side of the border, which is job losses also in key states.
Yeah, blackout. Mélanie looks like she's about to go on a blackout in that interview. It's quite interesting. I'm not inferring anything there, but it's very, very strange demeanor in that interview. It's like she's reading from a script, and she's almost sleepwalking, sonobalistic in her posture and the way she's speaking. I find it quite unnerving, actually, to watch. But how many times did she say trade war, trade war, trade war? Because that's Justin Trudeau's talking point right now. Now, The only one who's got any sense about this is Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. And once again, she is outlining exactly what Donald Trump needs to know. Did you know the United States has a 53 billion trade surplus with Canada when you cut out oil and gas? When oil and gas is not included. Look at that. And the point that Danielle Smith continues to make, is that we cannot cut off oil and gas to the United States without cutting it off to Ontario and Quebec. It comes from the same pipeline. The United States needs Canadian oil because its refineries are geared towards the kind of oil we produce in Canada. In other words, there's not enough American oil for the type of refineries they have in the United States, if that simplifies it. So the United States needs Canadian oil to refine. So it's nonsense for Donald Trump to say, we don't need your oil. He's obviously not thinking about the larger picture or doesn't know the larger picture. But interestingly enough, Justin Trudeau is doing exactly like Pop did when he waged war, that technical war against Alberta and Premier Peter Lougheed over ownership of oil and gas, especially oil. At that time, Peter Lougheed won, Alberta won, proving the federal government does not have jurisdiction over natural resources or over provincial oil rights. Now that is the point that has to be made. Justin Trudeau probably understands that, but he's ignoring it. And Mélanie Joly, I don't know if she understands that, but she continues to say everything's on the table. Keep repeating that line. Everything's on the table. Everything's on the table. We're going to have a trade war. You have no right to sell or not sell Alberta's oil. And that's what it comes down to. One last point here. Interesting. Canadian banks have said no to Mark Carney. They were withdrawing from his net zero banking alliance. Everything is indicating that nobody takes Mark Carney seriously. Mark Carney is a spent commodity already, and he's not even Liberal leader yet. But I'm telling you, I don't think he's going to ever be the next Liberal leader. Now, here we are. It's Sunday, January 19th. What's tomorrow? It's Inauguration Day in the United States. We're going to be watching very carefully to see what happens with Donald Trump's executive orders, which will follow immediately after he's sworn in as president. We will see what the response is from the Trudeau government, and we will see what follows that. And by the way, I wanted to mention, we've got these in the shop right now. These are fantastic. And I want to flag these right now. And I just want to show you one more slide here. We haven't done that. Sorry. Thank you so much for watching today, folks. Wanted to bring that to your attention. And here's a little bit of comedy to end the show, because this is what we're dealing with the Trudeau government and the Doug Ford government.
Qu'on va prendre, on a été tous unanimement d'accord. Any comments in English on that one?
Oh, I'm good.
Come on, get busy and sell this fish. Fresh fish! Fresh fish! Fresh fish!
I'm good. Thank you.
Fresh fish!
We'll be back again tomorrow with all the news you need to know. Continue to resolve to resist. Thanks for watching today. Exciting times ahead. We'll be there every day to let you know what's happening.